Welcome you all to our program, the first in a series of 3 for 2014 of History Roundtables. And today, as you all know, because you're here, the topic is toys and tools used by the early natives prior to the 19th century. And we really want to, we being the Bonner Milltown History Center, really want to thank St. Anne Catholic Church for providing this meeting space, and we'd like to thank Missoula Community Access Television, who's here filming the program. It will be on TV, and the History Center will also have copies of the program. So if you want to see it again, get a hold of us and we'll make sure you get a copy. And then Riley Slayton and the Slayton family provided the sound equipment for us today. We really appreciate that. On the side area there, we have a display that's provided by Willie Bateman. And Willie retired from the mill after a 43-year career working there in many departments. But Willie has actually many talents and interests, and he is an outstanding self-taught archaeologist, geologist, and historian, as you will see when you look at his display. He's traveled throughout the West extensively, collecting, finding things that you and I'm sure, or I at least, would just walk past and not even recognize as being something important. He began collecting at an early age, and he's found these items both locally and in the Blackfoot Valley as well as throughout the West. He's also an extraordinary storyteller, so I'll get him to tell you some of the stories of his finds. Willie shares his talents as a member of the Bonner Milltown History Center Committee, and we really appreciate his help. Our main speaker today, Norman Jacobson, has been attending History Roundtable since they started informally at Bonner School many years ago. He has a broad knowledge of history, including the exploration of David Thompson, the Mullen Road, Marshall Grade, and the road to the Buffalo. And he's also, as you may or may not know, an accomplished photographer. He has documented the cleanup and restoration of the Milltown Reservoir over the years, and undoubtedly has the most complete photographic record that exists of that Superfund project. Norman is also a Travelers Rest chapter member, a chapter board member, and a volunteer at Travelers Rest State Park, and he volunteers also for many other local nonprofits. Bonner woodsmen and mill workers took great pride in their tools and often fashioned toys for the local children as well. Before industrialization, tools and toys were of equal importance to early natives using the area. Norman has learned to make many of these using authentic methods, and today he's going to share his craft. Norman?
Thank you, Judy. It is a pleasure to be here. So you can hear. Okay, I'll try to. Okay, it is a pleasure to be here, and really an opportunity that a lot of people don't get. Bonner and Travelers Rest are two very unique places, and I'll try to compare the two with you before I get started into my exhibits here. But Travelers Rest basically was started when Lewis and Clark stopped there, and then made his trip back. But Bonner basically has been around a long time before primarily Travelers Rest. But there are some interesting comparisons that I can make between the two of them. When you look at Willie's collection over here, you can see that there are a lot of exhibits, or a lot of implements that the natives basically have left or lost. And this is something that they very seldom do. Lewis and Clark, I believe, made one of the men go back and pick up a knife that he had left in the morning, so he went back by himself. So the natives basically are the same thing. They put so much time and energy into making their tools that they can't afford to lose them. And so when we take a look at Willie's collection here, you can see there are a lot of tools. So I think basically what we're saying here is that the activity here at Bonner, the Bonner area, has been very extensive. You go to Traveler's Rest, and we do find a few artifacts, but we're really primarily known for three things. There is some lead that was picked up out of the fireplace, and there was a bead that was picked up, found. And then the third thing is the latrine. And I have examples of the two of them. and I would like to pass this around. In fact, I'd like to pass all of them around, because when I started out, I was hanging on to all the replicas that I made, but I found that by handing them out to the students or the people that are listening, I get a lot more questions. And you're welcome to ask any questions whenever you want. But we have the bead, and the bead was found, and this particular bead is a blue bead, which is very important for as far as the Indians are concerned, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. Then they were making lead bullets or balls at the time, and what they did is drop some lead spilled into the fire, and then it cooled down and formed. And so I made a replica of the lead that they found, and I'll pass this around. And then the third thing that we're known for is the latrine. And I'll tell you little stories about the tools in different situations. That's kind of interesting. A few years ago, I was with a group of fourth graders, and I was taking them around through the park. And I came to the latrine, and I was explaining what it's used for and how they're using it. And a little girl says, "I would not use that." And I explained to him that it's down low and it's hidden. And before I even finished talking, the boys were down there squatting on the latrine before I even told them that they could try check it out. Anyway, the whole class was there. And I have a photograph of the whole class, including the teacher there. And as they left, the little girl says, "I still wouldn't use it." So it is of interest there. Now, Traveler's Rest is probably known primarily that it's the location where some major decisions were made, whether to split up the group, which they did, or to stay together. And we have a few replicas or archaeological items there. But with Bonner, we have, I think there's probably close to a dozen sites that the Montana Archaeological Society has identified. And so Bonner has been used quite a bit before. And then the other thing is that the road to the Buffalo passed through Bonner, or here to the left of us. And that became very important when we got horses back about 1726, 27. And there is still part of the road to the Buffalo available. And I actually have been with 3 different groups of Lewis and Clark buffs up to that area. And it's not too rough of a place to go. It's up at Gold Creek. If you go up to Gold Creek and turn in there, it's about a half-a-mile hike up to where the power line goes over the hill. And you gain about 500 feet. But from there on, for another half mile, it's really easily identified. And there is one spot that could possibly be a vision quest. I have a photograph of another vision quest that I'll show you here today. And it's very similar as far as topography is concerned, but there is no footprint, as you could say, in terms of what that is. Well, the road to the Buffalo is used very readily. The road, the other trail is the trail that goes up the Clark Fork here, and one of the branches goes up into Flint Creek Valley. And Flint Creek Valley, or Phillipsburg, is known for their flint. And since flint is a very good fire starter, it probably was a trail that was used readily by the Indians looking for flint. And I have a demonstration here that I'd like to show you with the flint. A lot of you have been Boy Scouts, and you hear, I've heard and probably tried a lot of times starting a fire with a bow. And I have one of those too, but what I found, it takes quite a while. And I found that the Indians actually probably didn't use the bow as much for fire starting as they did for a drill, because they could take chert or they could take obsidian and nap it down to where it was basically a drill bit, and then they could go ahead and drill through it. And I have some examples of that. This might be a little bit large, but we'll find out. Actually, the first time I demonstrated this, I had tried it several times using cattails, because that's what I heard worked. But I also heard that cotton, the cotton seed from the cottonwood trees is great. And so the first time I tried it, I had a volunteer who was sitting up here in front today. And just about the time that it struck, the little gust of wind came up, and it just cleaned his arms, both arms off. There was no hair left, but you could sure smell it. Okay. This, if I can get it to work, it goes very rapidly, so you might watch it. And you can see why they don't use the bow anymore. So all they have to do is get everything ready, and then strike it, and they're all through. So you can see that. Don't want the fire alarm to go off here.
Norm, what was that ignited?
This is a piece of flint. Oh, this is cotton. In the spring, when the cottonwoods start flowering, they get a lot of seed floating down. And it's very attractive for the kids. I had one group of high school boys that came in, and they used a whole quart of it in just a few minutes. and the teacher made them go back out and bring me some in so I could have the rest of it. We have had about 3,000 students a year out at the Travelers Rest. I think 3,000 was the highest count. So we have a lot of students up there that go through it. Now, what I would like to do, start out, I see there aren't too many children here, but I'd like to start out with the toys because they're the things that attract the attention of the children. So I'll go through the toys and then I'll work my way through. And if you have any questions, be sure to ask because I like to ask questions. I understand that I'm in competition with one of the football games. And I was told to make it brief, so I'll work on it. Okay. Now, I don't know, you may have to move that around if you want a little. Okay, I'll try to come back over here.
Is that going to work?
Yeah, I think this will work, if you can hear me. Okay, what I've done, I've made a number of toys. Most of my toys are for the younger generation because we have other volunteers that are volunteering or they're using the toys in that of junior high or high school. So I'll start on this end and then I'll jump. Well, this is a doll that is common, that was used by the Sioux Indians. And basically what they did was take the leather buckskin from the deer of the lake and then made the doll out of it. The hair is that of the bison off the front. And I used this for several times, but one of the questions said, how can this be a little doll girl when it doesn't have any eyes? So I painted eyes on it since then. Now, the question that comes up is why such a little doll? I have a granddaughter, she's a senior now, but when she was way back when, the dolls that she had were like 1.5 to 2 feet long. You want a big doll. And so you might be thinking about that. We'll talk about it in just a minute. Now, the toys basically that the children have two purposes, really. One is to entertain them, but the second one is to educate them so that when they grow up, they can be useful citizens or the like. The doll basically is given to a little girl right away, and she grows up with that. And if you watch them, and I've noticed this a couple times, that when the mother carries her baby or her child, the child or the lady, the girl will have a doll. And a lot of times she'll be holding that doll just the way mom is holding her. And studies have come out that basically the child learns probably 80 to 85% of their social skills from their mother. And so you can see why if the mother is with, or the child is with the mother all the time, then she's going to be learning from that. Okay, the next one, this probably, I'd like to have you guess, but this is what the Blackfeet Indians called a bone horse. And if you take a look at it, it looks like the head of a horse. If you take an adult, a big bison, in fact, it comes out of the front foot of the bison. You have a full-grown horse. If you take him out of a young bison, you have a colt. And so basically they start these right away with the boys. And what might they be trying to do? They're trying to get them used to the horse, basically. And one of the questions that I've always had is, how could the Indian come out in the morning, like the Nez Perce had 2,000 horses, 800 men or thereabouts. How could they go out and pick up the horse or get the horse that they wanted? And without any fences or hobbles, you wouldn't dare. And so what a Blackfoot elder told me is that if the child or the adult will stay with that colt as soon as it's born, that it basically becomes imprinted that that boy or man is part of its livelihood. And so they feel that by starting them that quick, that they don't need the fences. And that works good until you start thinking about the young men was able to get the choice of for their bride if they brought home enough horses, because they would go out and steal horses or borrow horses, whatever it would be. So how are they going to train those? It's a good question, but at least this is one of the ways to entertain and to educate. This is my rattle, and it didn't impress the kids. It's too big, and so basically what I'm trying to do is find some deer feet that would be smaller that would do the same trick. So incidentally, I'm always looking for samples. But what they did is made a rattle out of the bison toenails and putting rocks or bones inside of it, and this would be the rattle that the children would use. Now, as an adult, what they would do, the men would turn this around so that the two toenails were out here, and take the rocks out of it, and they would use it as a club, a weapon to fight with. So here, come on. Then I'm working on one other one. This one, I made this very quickly so I wouldn't forget it. This is also a rattle that's made out of the toenails and the dew claws of the bison or the deer. Basically, the one that I saw had about 8 of the dew claws, and then it had a horn on the top to get it, but I had to make one so I wouldn't forget how to do it. So pass this one around. And then for another rattle, the Indians like to make noise, and so rattles and drums and the like. I haven't made a drum yet, but I'm working on it. What I did is take a gourd, and if you shake it enough, a lot of times they will, the seeds inside will break loose. And if they don't, what they did was basically drill a hole through the top and then stick their rocks or whatever it is inside. Well, for the Indian, you have to get a plug back in it. So what would they use for a plug? Well, what they did, and I'll pass this around, start that out. What they did was basically would go out to a ponderosa pine and get the pitch out of it and use that as their glue. And I have some of this. I'll pass this around so you can take a look at it. But the problem with ponderosa pine pitch is that in the summertime, when it gets hot, then the pitch starts to flow. And so in their process of experimenting, I'll give you lots of examples today, that they must have tried experimenting with everything. Well, what they found out was that if they would mix wood ashes with it, that it would stay hard. And so what I basically did was heat it up, mix the ashes in it, and it varies depending on how much you want to do with it, but up to about half ashes and half pitch. Anyway, this would be my dropper. I'd get it burning, or get it in, and then just hold it over the top of the gourd there, and it would drip right in and fill up the hole. And I'll pass this around. You can see some of the pitch before it's heated, some of it when it is heated, and I mix the ashes in, and then I have some different concentrations.
Norman?
Yes.
Question, where would they find gourds?
Find,
Were some of the tribes agricultural tribes, or where would they?
oh, the
find-
gourd.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, Mandan, I think, was using, had crops at that time, so that would be one of the cases. But that wouldn't be a local one. Yeah, I'm traveling out of Bonner a couple times. Okay. Now, this is where I would like to have a volunteer, but there's no children here, so I'll pass up. One of the things that they had for toys, just like we have today, is a day pack. And the reason that the doll is small and the horse is small and that is that everything they owned, they had to carry on their back. Mm-hmm. And for 12,000 years, up until 1750, the Indians were basically a pedestrian society. Everything that they owned, they had to carry on their back. And so what they did was when they killed a bison cow that was pregnant, they would take the calf or the fetus, skin it out, and make a pack sack out of it. So all they would have to do basically is sew at the bottom. And so what they would do then is this would be what the child had to do. They had to carry everything that they owned on their back. And so I asked the kid, how many of you can go home to your bedroom and put everything that you own in this pack sack, including all the dolls and the toys that you have? And so you can see them sit back. But since we have adults here, I'll try a little different approach. How many of you could go home and put everything that you own in a pack sack that would weigh between 100 and 125 pounds? That was basically about the size of pack that they had. Just for an example, the Indians up in the Flathead would go down snowshoes and walk up through Lake McDonald, crawl up over Logan Pass, go out onto the prairies, and kill their bison in the wintertime. And then they would make jerky out of it and bring it back and haul it all the way back up over the pass and back to Kalispell. The distance would be about from here to Spokane. So it gives you an idea, two things, how much work they put into it, but the need for food, which is crucial. Okay, anyway, the pack sack that they have, I made several mistakes and I started a new one, so I'll show you that too. But what they did, basically, would sew the bottom together, and then they could take the pack sack and put it on their head like this, and you've probably seen natives going this way, and this would be what they would carry. So they started the kids out, really, when they're 4, 5, 6 years old, with a pack sack that they had to carry all of their things in. So they learned early not only to work, but to conserve what they had.
But how many iPads would fit in there?
I'm not sure. Not too many. Okay. Like I said, I made a number of mistakes on that. So thanks to the Iversons, which you may know, has a cattle ranch up there, and they've given me 2 of their unborn or their dead calves. And so what I did, first thing, I cut the front legs off too short. So this time I have a little bit longer legs, so I'm trying that. And then I cut the hind legs off. And so in the process of tanning these are the scrapers that or the replicas of what the Indians used. And so I basically have tried to do duplicate them. So this gives you a little bit of an idea. This is a little bit bigger calf, so the pack sack would be a little bit bigger. But it would give you an idea as to what they do use. Okay. I have a number of scrapers here. Let's see. Probably the most primitive one would be this piece of basalt, which basically, when it fractures, this is the way it fractures in form of a half moon. The Eskimos use, I think this is what they call a ulu, which they could also scrape the hides, which we could use here, or they could do some cutting. And what we find is that tools basically are just an extension of our body. And what we have done basically is just improve on it. So the improvement that I have is this one right here. Because if you just take about 3 or 4 of these, you have your pizza cutter. It's something that we've discovered how to use a long time ago. Okay. Now we were talking about toys. I'm still trying to figure out how to make a flute. The flute is a thing that the Indians have used quite a bit, but I haven't been too successful with that, but I have been able to make a whistle, and it does work. So, but, and this one here is not a Bonner area, but they also use these for noise, or for, if I'm successful, I'll make it work here. So it makes a pretty good noise.
You did a good job.
But it's actually, they didn't have, they use smoke signals for changing, or for signals, but smoke signals take a while to get ready to suit. So they did have to carry some types of noisemakers so that they could make signals back and forth.
Is that the conch shell?
Yes.
Where did the conch shell come from, the Pacific or the Gulf?
Coast, from the, I think that one.
They would trade them.
Yeah, they would trade.
Yes.
Yeah. In the pedestrian society, they had to do a lot of trading. Yes.
That
But
is
that would be a
conch shell.
coastal thing. Yeah.
And it's hard to blow in those.
Yeah. It takes a little practice, and I need more of it. Okay. The next thing, at one of the training sessions I had, I was sitting beside a Nez Perce lady who had a purse like this, and she had a lot of things in it. and I'll pass this around so you can look at it. Here's some sinew and the like. And so I've tried to duplicate what she has. And at all of the presentations, I always ask, is there anyone here, the ladies, that would like to bring their purse up and we could empty them out and compare notes? And I've only had one, it actually was a young girl, a high school girl that volunteered, but I didn't take her up on it. Okay. What are some of the things that they have in it? And I'll pass that to you, you can look at it. But one of the things that they have in it is they have their sewing kit. And the sewing kit, this is probably the Hudson Bay Trapper needle that they use. But this is the needle that they use on their own. Now, any idea where they found this needle?
From a deer.
From a deer, do you know what part? Okay, the next deer you kill or find, if you take the front foot of the deer where the dew claws are, and if you skin the flesh right above, or the knee right above there, this bone sits right on top of the dew claw.
Oh.
And so this is about the size of it. They would drill a hole in it, and then they would thread it with the sinew and sew up their pack sack or whatever it may be. So, but they have to be, it has to dry out before it works. Okay. Now, when you take a look at that needle, you can, yeah, Tom?
It's interesting that that needle bone is only found on deer and not elk.
Yeah, just deer. Okay, I haven't tried the elk, so thank you. Yeah, but it is interesting there. Oh, one other thing. I also have a needle case I'll pass around, and I have two. It was a way of keeping the needles together and keeping the sinew together. And basically what it is just a small leg bone that I've cleaned the inside out, put the pitch on the bottom to seal it, and you can carry your needles with it. Okay, now those needles are not strong enough to puncture lead or puncture the hide, and so they need to make a number of awls. And so I have three different awls. This is made from a leg bone. This is probably just the side of a leg bone. And basically what they did was grind it down to a point, and then they would puncture the holes in it, and then they could go ahead and thread it so that they would have.
Could they use to grind the flint
they
or
could.
stones or?
Okay, to grind it, they could either, rub them on other stones, sandstones, or some harder material to grind it down to the point where it would work. Okay. This, I'm just about ashamed to pass it around, but you try things out and some work and some don't.
Yeah, that is a comb.
Yeah, it is a comb. And Sacagawea basically pulled Clark out of a river or an overflow out of Great Falls. And what he did was he made a comb for her to show his appreciation. So what I did is basically made a comb out of a sheep horn. And I'll show you a little more about it later. Now, the other thing, the Indians did a lot of painting, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. But one of the paintbrushes that they had was basically the shoulder blade on some of the animals. And if you sand down or grind down the bottom of the shoulder blade, you'll take a look at it, and it's pretty porous. So basically, they could dip it in and then paint their teepees. And then we come along a few years later, a few centuries later, and we have the same porous paintbrush.
Ace Hardware.
Yeah, Ace Hardware. That's right in the middle. Okay. This is for the older people for their toys.
It's not for me.
What I have here, it takes a while to get collections of everything. And like I said, I've probably been on it about 10 years. But what I have is beads, early forms. Some of the beads that I have were made in the 1600s, so they are fairly old. And then I was able to get bear claws from a hunter, and I also have a grizzly claw that I used, and so I made me a necklace from it. Actually, I'm wearing a necklace, but I was one of the few that didn't wear necklaces out at the park, and finally, one of them came up to me and says, "You're going to wear this. Join the crowd." so I have one here.
Something like that, I would definitely wear it.
Okay. Now, this necklace here is probably worth close to $300, and the reason for it, there's a number of reasons, but I have elk teeth, which have gone up in value a little bit, And then the blue beads have a special story to it as far as Lewis and Clark is concerned, and the Indians. The Indians were really very spiritually oriented. And just like, if you're really interested or really spiritually oriented, you want to be seen or you want to be recognized by your spiritual superior. And I use the example, if you're a young girl and you're looking for a boyfriend, what do? You wear bright lipstick or maybe nice clothes. If you're a boy, you probably wear a necktie or something else to impress the girls. Well, the Indians basically were the same way. They felt that if they have a lot of colors on, they're more apt to be seen. And just like the Pope, if you're in Rome, in the Vatican area, you can probably spot him in the crowd. And so basically the Indians did that same thing. The Indians, now again, remember it's a pedestrian society. The Indians would, if they lived here in Missoula, which we had some that did, they would walk to Helena to get red paint. Some of them would stop off at Bearmouth and get it because that was a source too. But there are pits out of Helena that are 8-10 feet deep and big enough to get down and walk in it, where they would come and get yellow paint, or red paint. They would walk down to Yellowstone Park to get yellow paint. And this was serious business for them, because there is one story where a band came down of 80 women, and then all the children and the men there, and they were digging in the, Mammoth Hot Springs. I'm not sure that's the place where they were digging, but they were in there digging, these 80 women, and one of the ladies screamed because her arm, the ground slipped so she couldn't get her arm out. And so the rest of them rushed in to help her, to get her free, and then the whole thing caved in. And so it killed all 80 of them, or practically all of them. And so what I'm getting at is that paint was a serious business, just like the diamond mines in Africa. They put men in situations that are not really, OSHA wouldn't go along with it. But the women also were willing to go into that situation to get the paint that they felt they needed or that their husbands needed that badly. So again, colors are important. Then the other one, the blue beads were really the most expensive beads, because Lewis and Clark several times said, if we only had more blue beads. Well, why did they want blue beads? Well, the religions that the Indians had and what the Christianity and Islam and the others, there's a lot of similarities. In fact, the closest similarity is Einstein with the Native Americans, if you have a chance to read his book, or a book on him. But anyway, what they realized is that their... I guess I'll talk about that later. Anyway, what they believed was that their spiritual leader resided in the sky, in the heavens. And what color is the heavens?
Blue.
It's blue. And so they wanted more and more blue beads. And when Lewis and Clark came through with blue beads, they took them right now and they ran out. Well, the Indians realized, this is important. So what did they do? They started looking for blue paints. And the only blue that we probably have is turquoise that you can think of, but it's quite a ways south from here. So what they did, again, now this is showing you how they went about business. They finally found that there was a certain duck if you take the feces of that duck and heat it, it would turn blue. And so this is where their source of blue paint was. And so when they saw blue beads, they were ready to trade for it. These blue beads were made in the 1600s. And if you take a look at them when I pass it around, you'll notice they are not uniform. In other words, one side will be wide and the other will be narrow. There will be different sizes. They're cut different ways. So they are not factory cut.
Weren't the natives aware that bright colors were used by birds to attract a mate?
Yeah, that probably would be a possibility, yes. Yeah, they definitely were.
Are these glass beads, or what substance do they use?
Yeah, there's a porcelain type of bead, yes, glass bead. I have two of them that, I guess they're both about the same. I'll just leave it. Whoops. Okay. Yeah, here's our body parts, but this is away from the human, although I guess we could use a smaller shoulder blade. This also is not from Bonner area, but this is a shovel, and you notice it's from a shoulder blade. These are the bison ribs here, and then I have a woodman. This is a leg bone, and this is the snow shovel that the Eskimos or the northern Indians would use. Again, our spade and our shovel is pretty much like this. So we're basically just improving on the techniques that they have. I don't know if I need to pass that one around. Okay, this is my prize. And there might be a couple of you here that know what it is used for. So if you know what it's used for, please don't say anything. Give them a chance to guess. Any idea what it might be?
A trap.
A trap.
Water.
It could be a fish trap. Yes, that's a good guess. Very definitely.
Did you hit it with the...
Yeah, I usually do this to mislead them.
Harvesting huckleberries.
Well, that's a good guess. Anyone else? Okay, since the football game's on, I won't waste any more time. This is a sled.
What, a sled?
A sled. And the lady that donated the real thing to the Smithsonian was a relative of Chief Sitting Bull. And when she turned it in, she said the children we had to wait until the snow was crusted. We had a side hill with no trees or rocks, and then we would let the kids sit on it, and they would sit here, and then they would take a hold of it here, and they would go down the hill. But since there were no trees, they didn't want trees around, what did they have to, or what probably would happen? They would probably spin around, see, and go down backwards and frontwards and the like. And so they were using this hundreds and thousands of years before we did. And so what we did basically was come up and discover this right here. So you take a hold of it, sit on it, just like they did, and down the hill you go. So, again, we're basically just improving on the things that have been around a long, long time. Okay. Now, we're getting closer here. We're back to Bonner here. What I have here are two fish. This is the closest thing I could get to a bull trout. It's a steelhead salmon, and this is one of the reasons that they came to Bonner, the Indians did. And then this one here is a northern pike. And
Turn this a little bit.
little more?
so that'll be good.
Okay, then get that out there. Okay. And what's neat about this, especially the northern pike, is that I would have, that's just, the bull trout. But the northern pike is really a learning situation to start with the tools, which I'm about ready to do. If you take your fingers and very carefully slide into the head, and then try to pull it out carefully, you'll feel about 200 to 300 teeth sticking into your finger. And so if you're a predator and you're a fish, when you bite that fish, you don't want him to get away. And so all of these teeth in here basically are good fish hooks. And then if you take a little, gotta be a little careful here, you can look in here and you'll find two other things that's of interest, and they're a lot like the shark. You'll see teeth that are laying down, and when the fish bites off more than it can chew, like we do sometimes, and it breaks off, another tooth will come up. And so it'll continue. But the interesting thing about it is take a look at the tongue, and you'll find that you have teeth-like projections on the tongue. So when they bite something, if they feel it getting away, they'll just slap their tongue up against it, and they got it for good. Okay. Okay. Since we dropped our photograph over there, we got to keep. I want to keep this close to Bonner. This is the skull of a grizzly bear, and I can use the grizzly bear basically for its teeth, because the teeth basically are fishhook style, and that's the introduction to our tools. And this particular grizzly bear has a history to it, and that's the grizzly bear over there that the pictures are on. And I guess I can pass them both. And I'll take just a minute on this one. Okay. This grizzly bear was in just the month of June, after they had a collar put on it. They tracked it. Every time the satellite came over, they recorded where he was. And if you get a look here, you can see all these little squares. And each one of these squares is where they located the grizzly bear. And during the month of June, he was located up here at forget the town, Condon, I think, Condon, and he came all the way down to Condon, and they have one reading of him where he's out here on the hill overlooking the Clinton fire station. So, and then he came back, he went all the way back up, and he went back into the Bob Marshall. So he was really traveling around. Then the other thing that is interesting, on his trip from Condon down to Seeley Lake, he got into about, well, actually, I think I heard 13 garbage cans. So on Wednesday night, when everybody put their garbage cans out on the highway for the garbage trucks to pick up, he just went on down the highway and had a smorgasbord. Because once they taste the garbage can and what's in it, they're ready to go. So you can take a look at this, and we have several photographs of him trying to get in. The one that's really interesting is this one right here. The fellow that's taking the photograph of that grizzly bear is in the woodshed, and the grizzly bear is looking in the woodshed. So he's pretty close to it. Okay. Now, the one other skull that I would like to just demonstrate today also has a Bonner connection. A number of you probably know Aaron Hall, Susan and Bruce Hall, their son. A few years ago, about 15 years ago, he was up with a group of children up in Marshall. And a mountain lion came down and jumped on one of the kids. And this is your mountain lion. Now, tools are designed to do a couple things. Tools are designed to make your life easier and safer. And so I can't help but think that Aaron would have really liked to have a tool or two in his hand. But from what I'm talking to Bruce, all he had to do, or all he was able to do, is hit the mountain lion with his fist and kick it. And so when you take a look at this skull, you can kind of get an idea as to the problem he had at hand. So this, that is a mountain lion skull.
Wow.
Okay, bear one, we'll leave that. Oh, one other thing here. Since we were talking about paint, I'm trying to think. I didn't talk to you yet about Gold Creek, did I?
No.
Okay, that's good. Old age is creeping up on me. One of the things on painting is, like you said, the Indians were really interested in getting paint. Up on in the Clearwater in Idaho, they have an area where they actually dug basins in a concrete, or not concrete, in a granite boulder. And that's granite boulder, pardon the picture, but they, this boulder here is probably bigger than any one of the tables that we have here. There are 5 basins that they've dug out in that rock to mix their paints. And so basically what this is a vision quest. Where they come in and paint themselves up, and then they'll sit and wait until an animal or something comes around. Well, here in in Bonner, the road to the Buffalo, there is an area up here at Gold Creek where it's a good, well, it's about a half a mile to get to it, and then you have a good half a mile of the road to the Buffalo. And I've taken, well, I've been up there many, many times, but I've taken 3 groups up there to the trail, or the road to the Buffalo. And there's one place up there on the trail that it actually looks a lot like this area right here. And I'll pass this around so you can look at it. And so, yeah, if any of you are interested ever to go up there to look at the trail and where it is and how it's located, it tells you a lot about trails. When I first started with Traveler's Rest, we had to pick out some topic that you could be an expert on, and I'm a quasi-expert on Indian trails. But that is probably one of the best potential vision quests that I've seen around here. So it's kind of interesting to look at. Okay. Now, we'll start now on the weapons, or getting here on the tail end. How am I doing? If you're getting tired, you can get up and stand or anything. The body parts of all tools basically are body parts.
I'm just going to try to get this a little closer to
Okay,
you, I think.
I'm gonna have to go turn on the other side.
Should we
here.
go on the other
Yeah,
side?
why don't we
Okay.
get on the other
We're
side?
going to take a moment. If you want to stand up and stretch, we're going to turn our microphone around.
Because I'll be
Go through.
over here.
Let's see. Still reach things there?
Yeah, I can move back and forth.
How's that for sound? You want to try a little bit of,
Okay, does that sound okay?
is that good?
Okay. Okay, I guess we'll start again. Okay, most tools basically are patterned after body parts, And tools basically are nothing more than extensions of our body parts. And one of the first tools that we have that you probably have talked to your children about is the fork. And invariably your children have started eating with their fingers before the forks. And so the fork basically is patterned after our hand. So we got 4 fingers and the thing. Now, going from 4 fingers, we'll go back to 1. One of the main sources for food for the Indian in this area was the camas root or the bitter root. And the reason we're going to be talking about food is that there was a study made where they analyzed the teeth and the bones of Indians. And they never found one bone or one tooth that didn't show evidence of starvation. And Lewis and Clark, I don't think, had found over 1 or 2 tribes that wasn't short of food sometime during the year. So food basically is a very prime commodity, as we know. Okay, one of the foods that's basic here is the camas root and the bitter root. And I'll pass these around too. The bitter root is the white, or the white ones, and the camas root looks like an onion. So you can pass those around. Now, some time ago, I saw a photograph of a bison robe that was covered with camas roots. Now, they're about the size of your thumb. And so can you imagine how many roots they had to dig up? Well, if you dug them up with your finger would be pretty sore. And so they had to come up with some tools that would dig camas roots. And so what I have here is one example that I found. This is an elk antler where they filed it down and they could use it to dig up camas roots. If any of you know or haven't seen camas roots, if you go over to the overlook and across the road in the spring, you'll see there's a nice grow, or not grow, but a nice group of camas roots that they're blue flowers, several flowers on it, but that would be a good source of it. Now, the Salish Indians came up with a technological advancement, I guess we could say. This was their camas root digger. And what they would do is get down here, hang on to both sides, and dig it out. But the thing that's good about it is that they didn't have to go back home when the one got dull. They would just turn it around and use the other side too. So it was not a major advancement, but it was one that helped them out. Now, if we take our hand now, going back to our hand, whole hand, we can take a look at a cup, which I have here. The cup probably is patterned after your hand, and you've all probably had drinking water out of your hand in the creek. Well, what they would do is take wood and carve out in this case it was a root knob, carve it out, and they would have their cups to drink. So that would be one. If they could find a handle on it, they had a spoon. Again, another sample. Won't take too much time on it. Then the next one, this is what do they call it? On the side of a tree. Burl, that's it. Okay. They could take the burl and hollow it out, and this would be their plate. The interesting thing about this is that I was reading on one of the trappers magazine, or one of the trappers writing up, that the trappers coming up the Yellowstone and the Missouri would not bring dishes with them because dishes were weight, added weight, and any added weight and that particular weight, they couldn't make money off of it. So any weight was traps. And so what they did is on the way up, they come up in groups, they would do their, there would be one guy or one cook that would cook all the meat or the food, and then they would find a grassy place and spread it out on the grass, and then the trappers would go and eat that. Then when they got to where they were going to trap, that's when they made their dishes. And they could make out of wood, and it wouldn't be something they'd have to carry all the way. Okay.
The other cut that was used was the elk horn. They would hollow out an elk antler horn.
Yes, they could, yeah. And have a small cup, yeah.
How did they cut it this way?
I used a bandsaw. They probably, actually, it probably with knives, or actually they burnt a lot of it. They made a lot of their canoes by burning, controlled burns. So that would be one way. Okay, now, getting into the weapons. The technology that the Indian had, we think of technology as the computer, but for the Indian, it was basically consisted of this, that they wanted to be able to kill a larger animal safer. And the reason for that is that when, this goes back a few 100,000 years, but the only food that they could get would be the plant vegetation that they had, or if they could kill, say, a squirrel or a rabbit or a bird, it would be with rocks. And so if you're getting food for, and getting a rabbit, you're only going to have probably enough food for the family for one day. So basically, every day, the man was looking for food. And so what they had to do is come up with something where they wouldn't have to spend so much time getting food. And so basically, that's the reason that they wanted to get a bigger animal. Because if they could kill a deer, they might have a day off, or 2 days, depending, and bison be more. So we started out throwing rocks, and then after the rocks, eventually the next, you see why I need replacements. Okay, just fooling. Don't worry about if something breaks. I try to keep doubles of everything, and I'm up close to it. The next thing is that we come up with a knife. Now, the knife would be what part of the body?
Teeth.
The teeth, okay. The teeth or the claws. And so basically then what they tried to do is find something that could replace it. And so what they did, basically, they found that there was a certain rock that they could chip and make a sharp knife. And this would be basically the obsidian. And again, a pedestrian society, you would go, if you lived here, you either had to trade with somebody that was down in Yellowstone Park, or you had to walk down to Yellowstone Park. And to walk down, they averaged about 10 miles a day. So it would take you a month to get down to Yellowstone Park, and then you'd have to do some napping there because you wouldn't want to haul all the rock back up here. You'd have to chip it down a little. And so you'd have to stay there a week or two, maybe, to get the obsidian that you need. Then you needed to come all the way back up to Missoula and start getting ready for winter. So what I'm getting at is that they had a tremendous investment in terms of time and energy in the knives that they had. And so they had to be sure that, they could hang on to it. Well, what I did is trying to make some knapping tools, and this is common for a knapping tool that the natives use. This is one that I used, and what I found out here is that it's a lot easier to make these tools than it is to use them. and I just found out that it might take like 20,000 hours or 20,000 pounds of obsidian to be good at it, and I'm just not. So I have some knapping tools, and this is an obsidian knife, and you can hold it up to the light and you can see some interesting colors there. Oh, start down here. Okay, I have to walk.
Okay.
Pardon?
That way if you can.
Then it'll come that way. Okay. Now, talk about the knives. Let's go. Yes.
Did you make the obsidian blade?
No, actually, I was able to. I needed elk antlers, and the fellow traded. He says, if you bring me some elk antlers up, I'll trade with you. So.
Have you ever cut with an obsidian blade?
I've never really been serious about it, but I have cut with it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, there's an interesting thing since you brought that up. There are some physicians that prefer to use the obsidian knife for facial surgery because what they found is that the obsidian, well, basically breaks at the molecular level, and the cuts that are made by an obsidian knife actually heal quicker and with less scarring. So they're not completely out of thing. Okay, now, when you have that much invested in a knife, that knife is pretty valuable. And so the women basically did all the work here, and they had to watch that knife all the time. Because if you drop it, well, it's glass, so it's very fragile. So back in the 1700s, the Hudson Bay Company moved into Canada, and they brought in a knife that looks like this right here. Now, when the ladies saw it, and realized it could be dropped and not broken, I could just, if I was living there, my wife and I, Maureen would say, I'll bet you if you wanted dinner tonight on time, you'll get me one of these knives. And so they called them factories, which were basically towns where they traded. One factory in Canada ordered 1,000 dozen of these for one shipment, one spring. So you can see right away the value that the Indians put in on this knife. And so I'll pass it around and you can take a look at it. I gotta speed things up. These are basically knives similar to what they were used, and they did like red paint, again, paint color. This knife here is basically a knife used by the Salish Indians, and it was a knife basically that they used to cut cattails, the kind in the swamp. And the reason that it was good, well, first let me back up one more thing. Here's where I used some of the pitch that I was telling you about, the glue. And when you pass this around, try to push into the black cement. You'll see that it's very, very hard. It doesn't melt when it gets warm. But what they would do is reach down into the swamp, and they would cut the cattails, because the cattails, the tubers are very high in starch, so it's like potatoes. And they could reach down in there, and then they could work the cattails around, get a hold of them the way they wanted, grab a hold of it again, and reach down and cut some more. So they were adapting tools, to serve the purpose that was involved. Okay. Okay. Now, like I mentioned about Aaron Hall, close combat isn't a good way to make a living, especially with lions or bears or the like. And so what we're going to do is work up on some more tools. One of the early tools was a slingshot. Probably David and Goliath is what you might remember. But they did use the sling, and they could take a hold of it here and become pretty proficient with it as to killing an animal. And then again, they would be farther away, and they could possibly kill a bigger animal. So this would be a major advancement. Now, the thing that's interesting here is, to me anyway, is as soon as you kill a bigger animal, you need more help, right? Mm-hmm. And if you need more help, that means that there may be two families together that may come in, or two men might come in. And so as the tools become better, the community becomes larger. And as the community becomes larger, you have a division of labor that begins to take place. And as the division of labor takes place, then we have people that can cook, we have people that can skin, we can have people that can lead, and the like. And so basically, yeah, the origin of politicians started early in life. And the bigger the group, the bigger the band or the clan, then the more organization that has to take place. And so that's kind of the theme that I'm working on. Okay, the next thing, this would have been very handy for Aaron. What we have here is a hatchet that one of the fellows, volunteers at Travelers Rest, gave me. He gave me the head, and the head of it basically he got from his great-great-grandpa back in Connecticut, who homesteaded back in the early 1800s, about the time Lewis and Clark came out here. And finally, about 10 years ago, all of the relatives were either dead or wanted to get away from the homestead, and so they were all invited up to clean it out. And he found this head in the attic, and he brought it back, and he gave it to me to use. And so what I did, I took it over to the university, and the fellow there looked at it, and he said, it's probably jasper. And he said, jasper probably isn't hard enough to be an axe, but it would be hard enough to crack a skull. So this was probably used as a tomahawk. So, yes?
Are these geodes?
No, that one was, our son found it in Bass Creek, right at the outlet of where it comes out on the canyon. And
Geodes come in this fashion as well.
yeah, and it's granite, and what it was probably rolled around in a rock basin in high water, like it does in Glacier Park. Okay, the next deal that you probably could get a little bit farther away from the animal, and is the spear, and you can throw the spear. Whoop, it works. You can throw the spear, yeah, probably 15, 20 feet, or actually, if you get real good at it, you could probably use a javelin. Consider it as a javelin. But this would be the next step. And again, we're getting more and more, we're getting bigger animals, again, and more people together. There. Okay. From the javelin, it basically, the next best weapon of choice would be the atlatl. And the atlatl was the weapon of choice when the Indians came over the Bering Strait. And basically the atlatl is nothing more than a streamlined spear. And the way I made my atlatl, I took two arrows and took the tip off of one and the feathers off the other and put them together and made me one long arrow, and then I made the atlatl, the spear, and I can throw this. I have thrown it about 75 yards. Yeah, I won't try it here today. But you take a hold of it like, let's see now, like this, I guess it would be. And then you reach back, and basically it's the javelin throw. But what you're doing is that you're adding about 2.5 feet to your arm, and so you get a lot more strength or thrust to it. And they could throw it easily 100 yards, and they could hit something with it. I had troubles hitting the bale of hay. In fact, I don't think I ever did. But what we're doing now is most hunters, and a lot of you are hunters, you don't always kill that animal on the first shot. And so basically with the atlatl, if you could hit that animal, and if you didn't kill it, that animal would have to run 100 yards to get you. So it gave you time to get up in a tree or get somewhere else. So we had more and more time. So I'll pass this around. There we go. Now, the next weapon of choice, and the timing now becomes important. The indications, the archaeological evidence says that the bow was starting to be used in North America about 3,000 years ago. Now, this becomes really important here in just a minute. So what they're saying basically is this, that the competition for food at the time 3,000 years ago became so great that the atlatl couldn't keep up with them. And so they had to have something that would be able to be more accurate and be able to get a bigger animal quicker without wasting a lot of time. So what the bow did was a number of things. First thing, they could hit the target very easily, but the main thing was that they didn't have to be seen. If you're throwing a spear, you've got to be out in the open to throw that spear. But now you could hide and shoot, and the animal would have to hunt for you to finally see you. So really, this was a major advancement for them. And then the other thing here is that, with this, then you could go out and kill a deer or a bison or 2 or 3, and you would have meat enough for a week or 2. And so now is the time that our storytelling probably started to take place, that you hear of the Indians in the wintertime. In other words, they now could take time out and tell stories. And so here's the bow that they ended up with. Let's see. Okay. Now, actually in 1726, the first horse came into Montana, and when they started with the horse, I might need that just for 1 minute. I forgot. My memory's getting kind of short. Okay, with the horse came another problem. But it really helped them. They didn't have to chase the bison on foot, but they could use a horse. But with the horse, if you're sitting on a horse with a bow and most of them are 5.5 to 6 feet tall, and you're sitting on a horse, the horse is running beside the bison, and there's probably 100 bison or maybe 1,000 beside you. What don't you want? You don't want to fall off.
Nope.
And so what they're doing, if they're trying to get a shot, they're moving this bow around, And if they hit that horse in the flank or hit it in the head, it may apt to be thrown off. And so what they needed is they needed a shorter bow. And so that, there you go, thank you. So that came up to the point here where we start looking, at the replica that took me 3 years to build. Okay, what they think is that in Yellowstone Park, that some of the Indians at one time or other found a Rocky Mountain sheep in one of the geyser pools. And what, if they're in the geyser pool, they're cooked meat, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but if you're trying to pull that animal out of the water, what they noticed was that the horn was pliable. When do you cut your toenails? Before or after a shower? Afterwards. And so it wasn't too long until they realized, well, maybe we could make a bow out of it. And so that's the process here at the end. This is what I did. It took me 3 years to do this. I'm a slow learner. My barbecue. A 5-gallon can and a barbecue. Okay, what I did is, and I also tried it a lot like the Indians did, but I didn't have the patience. This is one of the horns that I have, and at one time, this was right down here. This is what it took me. It took me a month to get this far apart.
With hot water?
With hot water, yeah. And so what they did was basically they cut, and they used obsidian at the time, that they would, and when you take a look at this piece right here is pretty flat. They would take, when it's hot and wet, they would slide their knife, cut this loose here, and then when they got it loose, then they would put it back in the water, spread it out, and tie it. And what I did, I'm kind of a slow learner, but I figured it out, that it would be a lot easier putting it on a frame like this than it would be to put it between rocks or tie it to trees and the like. And so what I did is that I would take the horn and straighten it out and keep straightening and tying it to this frame until finally I got it straight. And then when I got it straight, then what I did is I had to start shaving it down. And so I shaved it down. You can see I did a lot of cutting. And the inside looks a lot like that part. And finally I got it down to where it was straight and it looked like that. The one problem I had was that, I think it was this end here, I had trouble keeping it straight. And so I thought, well, if I put it back in this bucket with only water that would cover this much, then I could heat it up, get it wet, and I could twist it over. And so I did that, and when I opened it up, here it was right back in this shape right here. So I had to start all over. But I finally got it halfway straight, and so I got 2 of them straight like this. Then, I'm not much of a carpenter, but what I did basically was I took the two horns and set them like this, and then with a saw, if you cut it like this, then you end up with 2 pieces like this along with the other side, and I'll pass this around, but you can see if you cut them off, you can end up with a straight line, just like that. So then, the next thing then is that you have to glue this together. And so what I did was start to make my, the hide glue, as it's called, and within minutes, Maureen was out in the kitchen. because the aroma was terrible. And so I went on the internet and I asked, question, who could help me? And I got about 50 responses, but only 3 of them really made sense. They said, go down to the local grocery store and buy Knott's gelatin.
Knott's gelatin.
Knott's gelatin, because Knott's gelatin is made from the leftovers of the slaughterhouse.
Okay.
And so by putting it in water and boiling it down, you can boil it down to where it's a glue. And so that's what I did. I boiled it down, and then I took some bone for reinforcements on each side, and wrapped it up and let it dry. And then I had a fellow paint this for me, and the painting. Some of you may know John Thompson, who works at the Carousel. He did the painting for me, and what he did was, just 1 second, is that you see the similarity here. When a Nez Perce elder said when he saw this bone, he says, you need a quiver. So he made me a quiver and gave it to me. And this, everything on this quiver has some Nez Perce heritage. And this right here is the Lolo Trail. And so John painted the Lolo Trail on my boat. And the reason that, that you see these little ridges here, or looks like her, is that Lewis and Clark, when they went up to Lolo, they didn't go up the creek bottom. Because if you have all of your gear and horses and packs, you don't go up a creek bottom because of all the willows. So what they did, they camped in the meadows at night, went up on the hill during the day, came back down to the meadows at night, and back and forth and back and forth. And this, this is, I can show you the hill and the trail of that up here on Gold Creek. But that's the idea there for this. Then the surprising thing for me is,
Can you just go by the mic?
oh, okay, the surprising thing here is that all this fringe, and you always see this fringe on buckskin. It's if it's a shirt or pants or whatever it is. Do you know the real reason for it?
Yeah.
It's not for looks.
Keep the spirit.
Could be spirits, but there's another thing.
Spare parts.
Spare part? No, what somebody said.
Wicks the water away.
The water, yes. Water seeps. It has a capillary action, and so the water basically is drawn out onto these fringes, and so your shirt or your pants or your quiver dries out quicker. Okay. Now, that bowl that's being passed around could be made to have a strength of about 80-pound pull. And the way they added the strength to it was to glue sinew on the back of the bowl. And what they would do, they would add enough sinew to it to the strength that they wanted. And they could either use the flat stuff or they could take the sinew here. And the sinew that I have here, I've taken from the elk legs, and I skinned out or took sinew out of 26 elk legs, and I have a bucket full of sinew. But what they would do is when it dried, they would take a rock and they would pound it. And by pounding it, they can make the thread out of it. And so they could pound it and then make their layers. And so I'll pass these both around. And then I have, here's a whole bunch of sinew that you can take a look at.
Right.
Yeah.
Please send the quiver around.
Oh. Yeah, I guess I could. Now, I guess I'm just about about through. Thank goodness. Okay, what I'd like to finish up with one other thing. I've been talking about basically the last part of the 1700s. And with the bow and the quiver, you could see that we could have a lot more dead animals. In other words, we were able to supply more people with the food. But what we want to do is, there's a relationship here, and I'm not sure what it is, which way it is. If population and the tools that we have. It's something like the egg and the chicken, which one came first? Okay, now, in England, during the 100-Year War, which was in about between 13 and 1400s, this is what the situation was. Oh, I forgot one other thing before we get into that war. This weapon was the weapon of choice. And there was probably a band who was really lucky if they had one bow in the tribe, and so, or in the band. And so the fellow that had the bow and had a horse that he could hunt with, in other words, that would run into the bison, he could shoot, and then he would leave, get away from me before he'd get killed, was very important. And so what the Indian did, when they were out hunting bison, he would kick his wife and kids out of the teepee at night and bring the horse into the teepee because he felt it was easier to get a new wife and kids than it was. Sorry. This is not funny. But the other side of it is that the rest of the band realized that if he could go out and kill 6 or 7 bison, which they were able to kill up to 8. I read where one man was able to get 8 bison one day. That meant they had food for a month. So I'm sure they took sympathy on the wife and kids. Okay, but the important thing is that this was for one band. Now, getting back to the 100-Year War. In England, I think it was King Henry V or the Sixth, something like that, went into France with several thousand warriors. 500 of them, or 5,000 of them, were archers. And those archers each had to carry 4 sheaves of arrows. Now, one sheaf of arrows is, anyone know how many? It's 24. So here's the Blackfoot Indian that at the most probably had 3, 2 in his mouth and 1 in the bow, and then he was trying to steer the horse. This was top notch. This was Cadillac hunting. But in England, here you have 5,000 archers with 96 arrows apiece, and then you have carriages hauling arrows to battle with them. He had over 1.2 million arrows with him when they went into France. And they had carriages loaded with the extra arrows. They had arrowheads. They didn't put the heads on the arrows until they decided who they were going to try to kill. Because if it was the knights that they were after, they had armor-piercing heads that they put on the arrow. If it was horses that they wanted to kill, they had an arrowhead that would penetrate the horse and bleeding to death. And then if they wanted to kill the infantry, they had another arrow. When the battle was over, the men would rush out, pull the arrows out of their victims, and use the arrows again. Because all they had to do is put the heads on it, the head of choice. So what about population? Well, when Lewis and Clark came into North America, there was one Native American for about every 8 to 9 square miles. And this fits pretty close to the number of Indians that were in Ross's Hole when Lewis and Clark came through. In 1800, in just London alone, there were 120 people per square mile. So the quest for food is very, very essential. And as the population increases, the need for food is greater. And so it was so great that in England, they had developed the weapons that could wipe out the animals. Like the old saying is, conservation begins on a full stomach. Other words, you don't start, well, if a bison walks by your teepee and your wife and kids are starving to death, and you know that's the last bison, what are you going to do? You're going to kill that bison. And so this is the problem that we're really facing. With the tools that we develop, we have added problems. Well, did I get you home in time to see the last half of the football game?
You mentioned about the Kalispel natives in the winter
Yeah.
going around Lake McDonald. I'm not so sure that they had a friendly reception with the natives on the other side. And the nature alone would have been an obstacle. About how many times in the winter do you suppose they make that?
Okay, but that's really an interesting question because it brings up a couple of points. It was one trip a year, and it was only, from what I understand, it was only when they realized that there was shortage of food in the Flathead Valley. And then what it accomplished was probably 30 or so of the people from the Flathead tribe would leave and go over the mountain, which meant that what food was left would not have to be divided for those 30. And then when they got over on the other side, basically, what tribes don't do a lot of running in the wintertime. And so what they would do when they got over there, they would sit down and wait by the trail for the bison. This is why we have the problem in Yellowstone Park in the wintertime. Where are the bison going to go? They're going to follow a trail. And so the snowmobiles create trails, see? But anyway, what they would do is wait for the bison to come to water, then they would shoot them, dry it, and haul it back up. Yeah, it was a survival technique. And really, what the question is, does the amount of energy expended meet the amount of food that you can carry back? Some of them actually carried 3 packs. And they would, the more able-bodied men would take off as soon as they got up in the morning, go up to where they're going to camp that night, and then run back and get another one. So it was a very touchy situation. But I didn't read anything about the fighting in the wintertime, because I think for the most part, Indians stay put. That's where they do their storytelling. But that's a very good question. Yeah.
The road to the buffalo, is it official, like, does it have a starting point and an ending, officially have a starting point and ending point? If so, how long is it?
The Gold Creek?
Well, the road to the buffalo.
Oh, the road to the buffalo takes off at Hellgate Canyon, or where Missoula is, and goes out over Lewis and Clark Pass. Actually, you can go to Lewis and Clark Pass and just walk probably 1.5 miles. It's not
real rough, and you can go over the top, and you can see the mesas that Lewis writes about from the past. So you can go over.
Does it have some federal designation as a National Historic Trail, or?
It is marked.
It is?
Yeah.
Do you know about the lake?
The lake?
The lake.
It isn't over a mile to get up on top.
The length of the whole trail.
Oh, the length of the whole trail. It's probably from Missoula out to Great Falls.
Oh.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions?
Well, maybe we could ask more questions of you individually. We have coffee and cookies and invite you all to stay and visit with Norman and each other. I want to thank you so much for coming today. This has just been fascinating. I just wish we could stay here longer, but I gotta watch the Seahawks at 4:30.